Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going beyond the flashy headlines you always see about social media and politics.
Right.
Because we all want to know how it's really shaping political campaigns.
Yeah.
And to help us out, we've got some really fascinating research from Wharton Business School to dig into. We've got some real-world examples of some campaigns that have used social media effectively.
Interesting.
And of course, we can't ignore the potential downsides.
Yeah.
We'll be taking a quick look at fake news, echo chambers, and even election interference.
It's going to be a lot to cover, but by the end of this deep dive, I think you'll have a much more nuanced understanding of how social media is changing the political game for better and for worse.
Okay, so one of the things that really stood out to me in that Wharton research was how social media is shaking up the traditional incumbency advantage.
Right.
You know that thing where sitting politicians just have a lock on re-election?
Yeah.
They've got name recognition, they've got the fundraising network, the whole 9 yards. It's almost like they're running a marathon while their challengers are stuck in quicksand.
Well, it's true. Historically, incumbents have enjoyed a re-election rate of up to 90%.
Right.
But social media is changing the rules of the game.
How so?
Well, it's this powerful tool that allows challengers to get on a more level playing field.
Okay.
By connecting directly with voters. And this is especially important for, well,
newcomers.
Yeah, newcomers who don't have the same kind of access to traditional media outlets or, big donors.
Right. So how much of an impact are we talking about here? Is this just kind of a minor shift, or are we seeing a real sea change?
I think the research suggests more than just a minor shift.
Okay.
Wharton actually found that new candidates see a 1% to 3% boost in fundraising in just the first month on Twitter.
Really? That much?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that might not sound like much, but...
Well, in the world of political fundraising, that's a big deal.
Okay, yeah, that's a good chunk.
Early fundraising is really a crucial indicator of how viable a campaign is going to be.
Right.
And a boost like that can really even things out.
So you're telling me Twitter's not just about, witty comebacks and online debates? It's about turning those tweets into dollars.
It can be, yeah.
I've always assumed social media's impact was mostly about, reaching young voters. But is it really just that?
Well, it's definitely about more than just reaching young voters.
Okay.
What the research really shows is that social media is just more effective at introducing voters to candidates they might not be familiar with.
Okay.
It's not about age. It's about giving those lesser-known candidates a chance to connect with voters who maybe wouldn't otherwise know their names or their platforms.
It's almost like a digital meet and greet.
Yes.
Massive scale.
Right.
And speaking of money, I want to talk about the power of small donations.
Okay.
It might not seem like much when someone just chips in $5 or $10 here or there. But those small contributions, especially early on, they can add up.
They really do.
Right.
It's true. A large number of small donations, I think, creates this sense of momentum and this grassroots support. And that sends a signal to other potential donors, even to the media, that this candidate is someone to keep an eye on.
Wow, so it's like a snowball rolling downhill.
It is, gathering more and more snow as it goes.
And I bet it's pretty motivating for the candidates themselves, right?
Oh, absolutely, to see those numbers go up.
But it's not just about the money, is it?
No.
Social media seems to offer something more, something that traditional campaigning can't really do.
I think so. You're right. Social media allows candidates to humanize themselves in a way we haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, they can connect with voters on a more personal level, sharing glimpses into their lives, their family, their passions.
Yeah.
It's a whole new level of intimacy and authenticity that really seems to resonate with voters.
It is refreshing to see that side of politicians, Yeah. I mean, it does make them seem more relatable.
Right.
More like, real people. It's not just about policy positions anymore. Yeah. It's about, connecting on that human level.
Exactly.
Do you have any examples of that?
Oh, yeah. Tons.
Like what?
Well, think about Pete Buttigieg.
Okay.
Introducing his shelter dogs to his Twitter followers during his presidential run.
Oh, yeah.
Or Elizabeth Warren, hopping on Instagram for live chats with small donors.
Right.
It's just a way for voters to see beyond the polished sound bites and the staged campaign events and get a glimpse of the person behind the politician.
It makes them seem more approachable.
Exactly.
More trustworthy, but we can't just focus on the good stuff, right?
No.
There's a darker side to this story, too, isn't there?
There is, unfortunately.
Okay, so tell me about this darker side.
Oh.
What are we talking about?
Well, social media has this potential to empower new voices, to change the face of politics.
Right.
But we can't forget that it can also be used to spread misinformation,
Right.
manipulate voters,
Yeah.
even threaten democracy.
Okay, so reality check time.
Okay.
What are some of the, the specific concerns?
One of the biggest concerns, I think, is the spread of disinformation, what we often call fake news.
Right. Everyone's heard that.
Yeah. And we've all seen how false or misleading information can just spread like wildfire on social media.
Yeah.
Especially when it's, designed to appeal to people's emotions.
Yeah.
Or exploit their biases.
Right.
And this is made even worse, I think, by the fact that social media algorithms often create these things called echo chambers.
Echo chambers.
These online spaces where people are mostly exposed to information that confirms their existing beliefs.
Yeah.
This limits exposure to diverse perspectives and can make people more susceptible to misinformation and propaganda.
So you're telling me that my personalized newsfeed, the one that's supposed to be like tailored to my interests, might actually be contributing to like a less informed public?
It can.
That's a little ironic and unsettling. And it's not just those like, fake news articles.
Yeah.
We have to be careful about micro-targeting in political ads too, right?
Yes, exactly.
Micro-targeting, what is that?
So it's this technique where advertisers can use personal data to target very specific groups of people with tailored messages.
Okay.
And this can be used to exploit people's fears, their prejudices, or even their personal vulnerabilities. It's a powerful tool, but it can be used to manipulate voter behavior.
It sounds kind of creepy.
A little bit.
Like someone's peering into your online life and using that to try to control your thoughts and actions.
It does raise some serious ethical questions.
Yeah, it does.
And we've seen some real-world examples of how these tactics can be used.
Like what?
Well, I mean, like the 2016 election comes to mind.
Yeah, right. That's always the one that comes up when we talk about social media and election interference.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a prime example of how social media can be weaponized in a political context.
We saw foreign actors, particularly Russia, use social media to interfere in the election by spreading fake news, sowing discord, trying to manipulate voter opinions.
It was all over the news, fake accounts, inflammatory posts. It was a real mess.
It was.
And it really shook people's faith in our elections. And platforms like Facebook and Twitter were really used to spread all this propaganda to millions of people, often without their knowledge even.
Yes, exactly.
I remember hearing about that Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Right.
Was that related to this?
Absolutely. So the Cambridge Analytica scandal revealed how personal data that was harvested from Facebook users was actually used to create this really targeted political messaging that was aimed at influencing voter behavior.
Wow.
It was a major wake-up call, I think, about the potential for social media to be weaponized in these campaigns.
Yeah.
It showed how data can be used to manipulate people and exploit them on a massive scale.
This is some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how social media is this like double-edged sword. It can be a force for good, but it can also be incredibly dangerous.
Right.
It all comes down to how it's used.
Yes.
Right? And who's wielding the power.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool. And it requires careful consideration and, responsible use.
Right.
And that's something we all need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Both as users of social media, I think, and as citizens participating in democracy.
Well said. Well, where do we go from here? I mean, this is a lot to take in, but I'm definitely starting to see the bigger picture.
Okay. The key takeaway, I think, is social media has fundamentally changed the way political campaigns work.
Okay.
Both good and bad.
Yeah.
It's a tool that can, empower, amplify, even manipulate. And that's why it's so important to be aware of all the,
nuances.
The nuances, yeah.
I'm picking up on that, and I'm interested in this idea of social media as this double-edged sword. On one hand, it can give a voice to the voiceless, disrupt the status quo,
Yeah.
But it can be used to spread all this misinformation and manipulate voters. It's like this tension between democratization and manipulation.
It is. It's this constant tension. And I think that tension is at the heart of the challenge we face today.
Which is?
How do we harness the power of social media
Okay.
for good,
Right.
while mitigating all the risks that come with it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we can't just like unplug from social media, right?
Right.
It's too integrated into our lives. And it does have that potential to be a powerful force for change.
Yeah.
I think about all the social movements that have gained traction through social media, like the Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter.
Those are great examples.
Right.
Social media can be this incredibly powerful tool for organizing and mobilizing people around, a shared cause.
Okay.
And it gives a platform for marginalized communities to share their stories and experiences with everyone.
Yeah.
A global audience.
Right. So it can help shift narratives
It can.
and challenge systems of oppression. That's what gives me hope. It's like this megaphone that can amplify voices that have been silenced for, forever.
Right.
But then I think about the 2016 election and Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
All the ways social media has been used to spread lies and create all this division.
Right. And it can be disheartening.
It is.
But it's important to remember, I think, that how social media is used is up to us.
Okay.
The users.
Right.
We have the power to choose how we engage with these platforms.
Yeah.
And what kind of content we share.
So we can amplify the voices that are promoting truth and justice, or we can amplify the voices that are just spreading fear and hate.
Right.
The choice is ours.
It is. It's up to us.
I like that it puts the responsibility back on us as individuals. But sometimes it feels like we're up against these really powerful algorithms that are designed to, keep us hooked, engaged.
Yeah.
Even if that means showing us content that's, divisive or even harmful.
Right.
It's like we're caught in this attention economy.
Yeah.
Where the most outrageous attention-grabbing stuff rises to the top.
It does.
Regardless of whether it's true or not.
Exactly. That's a great point. And it's a real concern.
Yeah.
We have to be aware of how these algorithms work.
Okay.
How they can shape, our perceptions of the world.
All right.
It's easy to get sucked into that outrage cycle.
Yeah.
You see all those clickbait headlines, the inflammatory tweets.
Yeah.
You lose sight of the bigger picture.
Totally.
We have to be more careful about what we see and who we trust. We all have.
Sometimes I find myself scrolling through my feed and I get all worked up over some sensationalized story. And then I have to step back and be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath and actually think about what I'm reading.
Right.
Like, who's behind this?
Yeah.
What's their agenda?
Yeah.
What evidence do they even have?
Those are all the right questions.
Yeah.
You can't accept everything you see online as the truth.
No.
You have to think critically.
Right.
And develop those media literacy skills.
It's like media literacy 101.
It is.
Right.
And you have to be willing to question your own biases.
That's a hard one.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So much of this comes down to education, doesn't it?
I think so.
We need to give people the tools and the knowledge. To navigate all of this, this complex digital landscapes, right?
Oh, right.
We need to teach people how to identify misinformation.
Yes.
Evaluate sources. Think critically about the information they see online.
Absolutely. Media literacy is more important now than ever.
Right.
We have to give people the tools to be savvy consumers of information, to know what's real and what's fake.
Yeah.
Understand how those algorithms work.
Right.
How they can, shape what we think.
Yeah.
We need to teach people how to think critically and not just passively absorb everything.
And it's not just about individual responsibility either, is it?
No, not at all.
There's a role for the platforms to play too, right?
Absolutely.
Like Facebook and Twitter, they gotta do something.
They do. They have a responsibility to deal with this misinformation.
Okay.
To create systems that promote, truth and accuracy.
Right.
They need to find better ways to check facts.
Yeah.
Moderate content. And they have to be more upfront about how their algorithms work.
Yeah.
And how they affect us.
This is a big problem.
It is.
But it's one that we can't ignore.
Exactly. Right. We can't just bury our heads in the sand.
No.
The stakes are too high.
Yeah, the future of democracy might depend on it.
You're absolutely right. We can't just sit back and do nothing.
Right.
We have to be actively engaged in shaping the future of all this, how social media works in our political lives.
So what does that look like? What are some things we can do to make social media a force for good in politics?
Well, I think we can all try to, diversify our sources of information.
Okay.
Don't just get your news and updates from your social media feed.
Right.
Seek out a bunch of different sources.
Yeah.
Even ones that challenge what you already think.
I've been trying to do that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I subscribe to a couple newspapers that have, different opinions than, the news sources I usually read. It's been eye-opening.
Yeah, it's important to get different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Challenge your own assumptions.
Okay.
It helps you understand the world better.
Makes sense. And speaking of assumptions, I think we all got to be aware of our own biases too, right?
Of course.
I mean, we all have them even if we don't realize it.
We do.
And those biases can really shape how we interpret information and how we interact with people online.
Absolutely. That's so true. You have to be willing to examine your own biases.
Okay.
And be open to the possibility that,
You could be wrong.
Yeah, you could be wrong.
It's hard though.
It is.
Especially now when everyone seems so polarized. It's like everyone's shouting from their own little echo chambers.
It can feel that way, but we have to find ways to,
Connect,
bridge those divides.
Yeah.
Find common ground.
It's essential.
It is. For a healthy democracy, we need to be able to have these civil conversations, even when we disagree.
Right. I think being aware of the problem is a good first step.
It is.
Now that we've kind of, peeled back the layers and seen how social media can manipulate and mislead, we can be more critical of what we see online. Ask ourselves those questions.
Right. Who's behind this?
Yeah.
What do they want? Do they have any proof?
It's like being a detective.
It is.
In a digital age.
You have to have those critical thinking skills to figure out what's real.
Yeah.
What's fake.
Okay.
Protect yourself from being manipulated.
And this isn't just about protecting ourselves, right?
No.
It's about protecting our democracy.
Exactly. Misinformation can really erode trust.
Yeah.
Undermine a healthy democracy.
That's important. It's not just about me.
Right.
It's about all of us.
It's about all of us. Yeah. We all have to do our part to safeguard our democracy.
So what can we do besides, getting better at critical thinking?
Well, one of the most important things, I think, is to fact check.
Fact check.
If something sounds off, don't just share it.
Right.
Take a minute to actually see if it's true.
Yeah.
Before you spread it around.
Okay.
There are tons of great websites that do fact checking.
Right.
Use them.
Yeah, it's so easy to just share stuff without thinking.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have to be more responsible. Think about the consequences.
Exactly.
And beyond fact-checking,
Yeah.
we can be more mindful of how we act online. We can choose to have, real conversations even when we disagree.
Right.
Be respectful of other people's opinions, even if we don't share them.
Exactly.
Choose to amplify the voices that are trying to do good.
Yes.
Instead of the ones that are just trying to spread fear and division.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea.
It is.
It reminds us that we have the power to make a difference.
We do.
Even in small ways.
Even in small ways, that's right.
Our choices,
Yeah.
both individually and collectively,
Yeah.
will determine the future of social media
Right.
and its impact on our politics.
They will.
So, final takeaway for our listeners today.
I would say
What should they be thinking about?
social media is a powerful tool. It can both help and hurt democracy.
Right.
It's up to us to use it wisely.
Okay. We're kind of at a crossroads, aren't we?
I think so.
We have this incredible technology that can connect us in ways we never thought possible.
Right.
But it can also tear us apart and undermine,
Yeah.
democracy.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. We were talking about the attention economy earlier, how it can make it really hard to have, these informed discussions about politics. It's like we're constantly bombarded with these little bits of information, but we don't really have time to process any of it.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to manage our information intake and avoid getting sucked into that outrage cycle?
That's a good question. And I think it's something we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah.
One thing I try to do is be more deliberate about the time I spend on social media.
Okay.
I set some limits for myself. And I try to pay attention to how I'm feeling when I'm on these platforms. Like if I start to feel anxious or overwhelmed,
Yeah.
I take a break.
That's a good idea. I definitely spend way too much time, sometimes just mindlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
It's a bad habit.
It can be.
I think it's also important to think about where we're getting our information from.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to share something without checking if it's even true.
It is. Yeah. We have to be more careful about that.
Right. We can't just believe everything we see online. We need to check sources, look for evidence, be skeptical of anything that seems too good to be true.
Exactly.
Or too crazy to be real.
It's like detective work.
It is. We have to investigate, gather evidence, and, weigh the facts before we jump to conclusions.
And that takes time and effort,
It does.
which can be tough in this world where everything's moving so fast.
Yeah. Are there any other, practical things we can do?
Well, one thing I always recommend is getting information from lots of different places.
Okay.
Don't just stick to one or two sources for your news. Try to find different viewpoints, even ones you might not agree with.
That can be hard.
It can. It's easy to just stay in our comfort zones where everyone agrees with us.
Right. But that doesn't really make us think, does it?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It can give you a really limited view of the world.
Right.
So I think step out of your comfort zone.
Okay.
Read something you wouldn't normally read. Listen to different podcasts.
Yeah.
Talk to people who see things differently than you do.
That's so important.
Yeah.
It is. It's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles.
Right.
But real growth comes from encountering different perspectives and having, real conversations.
Exactly. And you don't have to agree with someone to respect their opinion.
Right. That's a good point.
It's not about changing everyone's mind.
Okay.
It's about understanding each other, challenging your own ideas,
Okay.
having a good exchange of ideas.
Thinking back on all the stuff we've talked about,
Yeah.
it really seems like social media itself isn't good or bad.
Right.
It's just a tool.
It is. Like any tool, they can be used in different ways.
And that's kind of empowering.
It is.
But also a little scary.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it means we have the power
We do.
to shape how it's used
Right.
and what its impact will be on our world.
It's up to us to decide.
Yeah, whether we use it to connect, inform, empower, or whether we use it to divide, manipulate, control.
That's the challenge, and I think the opportunity. And it's something we have to face
We do.
with courage and wisdom
Yeah.
and a real commitment to making things better.
Well said. So that brings us to the end of our deep dive into social media and politics.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot today,
Yeah, lots.
from how social media can empower new voices and shake things up, to the dangers of misinformation,
Right.
and how it can erode trust in our democracy.
It's been a journey.
But it's just the start of the conversation.
Yeah.
There's so much more to learn about all this.
Oh.
Keep digging deeper, question everything, seek out different viewpoints, and talk to people who see things differently.
And be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Use your voice to make a difference.
Well put. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of, well, everything.